Hello, 205. Milo's here with me. We're going to do a quick lesson. First, we're going to talk about author's purpose, which is what I've got here up on the screen that I'm sharing with you. There are several different reasons why an author might write a book or a story or a text, or an article, any sort of text, really. Usually people refer to three main reasons, which we see on this little chart, this one that says pi. That can help you remember three of the main reasons why an author would write a text. But there's also a fourth reason that I wanted to make sure we included on this chart that we've got here, just because that's one that also we are sort of studying or would have been working on, especially if we would have been together. And that's the one that I did a video on before. That's the T. So let's go through what each of these reasons is. Sorry, Milo is being needy right now. Let me see here. We'll go through what each of those reasons is, and then we'll get started on our own writing, because we are going to learn about author's purpose so that we can actually do our own writing as authors. Okay, so there are the three main reasons why an author would write something. That's their purpose or their point or their reason for writing. The first one is to persuade, which means to convince somebody of something. You want to convince the reader maybe of an opinion that you have. That's the one that we're going to be practicing today, so we'll get back into that in a minute. The second reason is inform. To inform somebody of something, which sounds like the word information. You are giving or teaching information if your reason for writing is to inform. And we've done that kind of writing already in second grade. When you guys did at the beginning of the year, you were informing kindergartners about how our school is similar to or different from schools around the world. We also have written information paragraphs when we have informed people about the pollinators that we studied just a few weeks ago. The next reason why someone might write, and you guys have also done this kind of writing, is to entertain. And entertain means to capture someone's attention, which you might remember you've also written to entertain before. It's to tell a story for enjoyment. You want people to be interested. Maybe it's a scary story, or maybe it's a funny story, or maybe it's a one that captures your attention in some way. And you guys did that when you did narrative writing, when we were learning about fossils in our second quarter of school. And then you guys wrote a story to entertain, to tell about a time that you discovered a fossil. So you guys have already done information writing. You've already done entertaining writing. We call it informational, and we call it narrative writing. And today we're going to practice what's called opinion writing, which is when you write about your opinion, but you're doing it to persuade or convince a reader to share your same opinion or to think the same thing as you. That last one, that T, the teach a lesson, this one down here, that one is usually when it comes to fairy tales or fables, and those ones we usually use when we it's a story that like sort of is passed down from cultures, which I sort of talked about in another video, where you're supposed to learn a way to live or a way to be, or maybe to learn about why, like a fake story to tell why something happens in the world. Like, remember I said Thor, the story of Thor is one that sort of explains why thunderstorms happen. All right. So we're going to move on. Because we know now about author's purpose, you guys now know that you're going to be authors. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to go together to our school website. If you don't have a computer, that's okay. You can just follow along really quickly. We're going to go to resources. We're going to click on SCS learning guides. Milo is acting stressed out. Okay, we're going to go to second grade. And I am looking at the April 6 to 10 learning guides, the April 6 through 10 ELA packet right here, just for the prompt. If you do not have access to this packet, that is okay. Or if you didn't pick it up at a pickup site, or if you didn't have a way to access it online, you can still look at it here with me. Okay, so here's our prompt. Or our instructions that tells us what we need to make sure to do. So drafting a persuasive paragraph. Our prompt is to write a paragraph that would convince your teacher to go on a class trip. So I'm going to let you decide on what kind of class trip, but basically it's your opinion, right? It's what you think we should do to go on a class trip. And what you're going to do is you're going to have 3 different parts, and I'm going to show you another little chart that helps me to remember when I'm doing my own opinion writing or persuasive writing. I'm going to take these off so you can see my face better. So you're going to need to include a topic sentence, which tells the goal. You're going to need to include reasons that support or hold up or make understood your goal. And then you're going to have a concluding sentence that sums up the goal, or that sort of says again what the topic says. And we've done this with our information writing, where we give a topic sentence and we have reasons and then we have a conclusion. So we're used to this format, but in this one we're doing it about our opinion. So really quickly, I'll pull up this chart as well. I like to think of Oreo when I'm doing opinion writing. This is kind of like when we talk about our information writing, where it's a sandwich, where the bread kind of holds it together, where you say what your topic is in the beginning and at the end. In the same way, we say our opinion at the beginning and the end, which is kind of like the chocolate part of an Oreo that holds all the cream together. But the cream, or the inside, is our reasons and our evidence for why we have that opinion. So we might have our own personal reasons for why, but we also might have pretty good evidence from a text or from the world around us for why it should be, for in this case, why we should go on a certain class trip that you have an opinion about. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started with some writing. Ooh, where did I go? Here we go. We're going to write to answer this question, to write a paragraph that would convince your teacher to go on a class trip. So I'm going to do a model, and then you can just grab a piece of paper, which is what I've done. I grabbed some paper. I grabbed some colored markers. Here's my glasses. Grab some colored markers. You can grab a pen or a pencil or whatever, and we'll get started. So here, let me pause this for a second so I can get set up so you can make sure you can see me. Okay, so since this is our first time writing an Oreo paragraph, what I'm going to ask you to do is, on your piece of paper, you are going to you can take a color, or you can take, I'm going to do it in a bright color so that I remember. You can take a color, and I want you to write an O, or maybe you could, here, we'll use the big side of my marker, an O, an R, and an E, which you can kind of put close together, and then an O at the bottom. Okay, so we have our 3 parts to our writing. The first part is that O, which is where you're going to tell what your opinion is. So if you want to, you can write opinion. For R and E, that's the second part. That's going to be your reasons and your evidence, or some people will say examples. Reasons and evidence. And anytime that if you need to be able to spell something that I've written, you can pause the video and you should be able to spell it out. And then I'm going to draw another line, because at the bottom is where I put my opinion again. And I might write it exactly the same, or I can get fancy and make it sound a little bit different, just so it sounds a little bit fancier. Okay, so I'm going to switch colors. And we're first going to write our opinion. So what are some ideas? Let's think, brainstorm. What are some ideas for a class trip? And remember, you're writing your opinion to me to convince me that we should go on a certain class trip. So one that I thought would be cool, I think the Pink Palace was offering, and this is in real life, the Pink Palace was offering fossil trips where you could go and you could look at real fossils. And I feel like I could come up with some pretty good reasons for why we should do that, because we studied as a class about fossils. and it would probably be a good idea to go. So that's, that's what I'm going to write about. If maybe you want to go to the zoo, maybe you want to go to the planetarium to look at stars, maybe you want to go to the pool. I don't know. What is your class trip idea? So think of one right now. You can pause and think of one, maybe brainstorm on your paper of good ideas that you could have some pretty good reasons for. And then I'm going to get started on writing mine. Okay, so what is my opinion? My opinion is that we should go on a class trip to learn about fossils to the Pink Palace. So that's what I'm going to write. In my opinion, because this is my opinion, in my opinion, and I'm going to start off like that, in my opinion, and that's a good transition or starter for sentence starter, right? In my opinion, I think we should go to the Pink Palace fossil, I think it was called an excursion. I think that was what the name of it was. But in my opinion, I think we should go to the Pink Palace fossil excursion. Now, why do I think that? What are my reasons, or what is my evidence? What are my reasons? What was one of the ones that I just said? I just said because we learned about fossils and how fossils are made in class. So I'm not just going to say, because we learned about it, because that doesn't sound very professional. It doesn't sound very academic, right? I don't sound like I'm someone who is carefully thinking about how I present my argument. Because remember, you want to convince Mrs. Biere that we should go on this trip. And you're not going to convince her by yelling at her, right? You're going to convince her by giving good reasons. So I'm going to say one reason is because, one reason is a good sentence starter. One reason is because we learned about fossils in our class. Okay, we learned about fossils in our class. That's a pretty good reason. Is there any evidence that I could add for that? Let's see, what would be evidence? And I could add on to this reason with some evidence and say all of quarter 2, we learned about how fossils are formed. So I could add that as my evidence. In quarter 2 of school, we learned about how fossils are formed. Okay, what's another reason that we should go on a Pink Palace fossil excursion? Can you think of another reason? You can pause it if you need to think of another reason. What would be a really strong reason? I could say because I just want to get out of the house and do something, but that's not a really strong reason that's going to convince Mrs. Biere. I could say because the Pink Palace is cool. It's also not a really strong reason to convince Mrs. Biere that we should go on a trip. You could say because I like fossils. That's a good reason, but it's still not super strong. But a stronger reason might be because the whole class enjoys learning about fossils. Because then you would convince me more, because I would say, oh, you're right. Everybody liked when we learned about fossils. So maybe that would be a strong enough reason for us to go on a trip. So I can add that one here. So blah, blah, blah. I'm going to add my reason about all of the class enjoyed learning about fossils, which actually a good sentence starter for that would be another reason, because I already said one reason. So I can say another reason we should, and I can remind you what my opinion is, another reason we should go to the fossil excursion is, and then I'll say because everybody enjoyed learning about fossils in our class. Something like that. Finally, to end, you're going to add your conclusion, your concluding statement or your ending statement, which could be the same as your beginning opinion statement. Or you could mix it up a little bit with the words so that we sound a little bit more fancy. Okay, so my original opinion sentence said, in my opinion, I think we should go to the Pink Palace fossil excursion. So at the end I can say, in my opinion, again, or I can say just I think we should, and I'll say go on a trip just to make it sound a little different. I think we should go on a trip to the Pink Palace for the fossil excursion. And there's my paragraph. So if you need to pause and look at it again, maybe you need to look at it for some spelling. It's your turn now. You can get out a piece of paper and you can write this out, or if you have the packet already, you can use the packet lines. You can divide your paper into opinion, reasons and evidence, opinion, so that you make sure you have all the parts of your little sandwich or of your little Oreo. Start with some sentence starters like this. In my opinion, one reason. If you add a second reason, you can say another reason. Those are some good transition words. You can even just say, I think. Because remember, this is your opinion. But also remember that you're supposed to persuade me or convince me that your opinion is a good one or a strong one. So do your very, very best to come up with really strong reasons that your purpose for writing is to persuade Mrs. Biere about a class trip that we should go on. All right, I love you guys. I miss you so very much. Have fun writing.